Okay, so we are back, and if you were here for the first time that Lori and I chatted and you're wondering what's going on, it's because there was an echo. And so we didn't want to drive you all crazy with an echo, so I've actually pulled those videos down. We're going to do this again because it was really good stuff and I want you to hear it. So we're back to do this again. All right, so I'm here with Lori Ann Wood. She's the author of Divine Detour. Lori, show us your book so we can see it. Woo-hoo. I have it and I'm getting ready. It's on my list of to reads, so I'm excited to read it. Also, Lori has been a part of this is one of our Launch Week Lives. Lori's been a part of the podcast launch in actually multiple ways. If you have entered the giveaway, by the way, today's the last day to enter the giveaway. Lori has not only donated a copy of her book to go in the Ignite Your Devotional Life bundle, but she's also offering some resources so that even if you don't win one of the 3 prize packages, you actually can grab her resources for free. One of them is a 3-day devotional called Cultivating Gratitude When Life is Hard, and we all need that sometimes. And then the other is called 5 Prayers and Promises When You Can't Talk to God. So we're going to ask Lori to share a little bit about all of those at the end. But first up, we're going to hop into the primary bulk of the conversation. And Lori, we're just going to step right into it. So the first question is, how long have you had a relationship with God, or how long have you been walking with God?
Oh, Rose, that's a good question. First, let me say it's so exciting to be part of your podcast launch. I'm
Thank you.
I'm super excited for that. But I'm thinking that I knew about God almost as early as I knew about my own parents. And I know for sure that I first heard God's promises through the lips of my mother. And so I don't really remember a time when I didn't know about God.
That's awesome.
But and which is such a blessing.
Yeah.
But I think my relationship with him really took a turn about 8 years ago when I was diagnosed with end stage heart failure.
Yeah, I think that would make some changes in my life too. Yeah. And actually, I might actually want to come back to you at some point and chat with that because after the interview was over, my husband said, I want to know more about her instead. I want to know more about that. So apparently we need to chat again. But okay, so then the next question is what are your favorite ways to spend time with God, or what are the ways that you most easily connect with God?
Well, I have always admired morning people and I always wanted to be a morning person, but I have trouble getting up and setting aside what I think is the perfect quiet time with, before everyone wakes up
Mm-hmm.
in a nice soft chair, cup of coffee. I don't even drink coffee, but I think the real things that stood in my way a lot of times were small children and in later years this chronic illness that I have. So they would always seem to uproot my plans for this quiet time. And so, what I've found is that for me, the best time to connect with God is just during the regular cadence of everyday life. And that might be, while we're running errands or while we're doing laundry or just going on a walk.
Yeah.
And an easy way or maybe a seamless way to do that for me is listening to something. And so I love audio versions of the Bible. I have the YouVersion app on my phone and they have scripture that'll,
Yeah.
read right
It
to
just
you.
reads it to you. Yeah.
And it's so great because you can just pop it in and whatever else you're doing. And also they have devos that are
Mm-hmm.
audio. So
Yeah.
that's a great resource. And also one that kind of caught me by surprise a little bit, but it makes sense is contemporary Christian music is
Mm-hmm.
such a balm sometimes
Yeah.
when you're hurting. We're both writers and words are super important to
Yeah.
us. And so when I hear the lyrics of a Christian song, they can kind of seep in to the cracks in my
Yeah.
soul when nothing else can get in there.
Yeah.
And I just, it's amazing. But I also equally love Christian podcasts for the same reason, because I can hear from other Christian voices
Yeah.
and people that I wouldn't run into, on the sidewalk in my own hometown. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Now, I love that you mentioned the U version. I recently have started when I go to the gym and then I take a shower after, in that time where I'm like getting everything ready, I'm listening to a U version devotional. So that's really good. I'm glad
Yeah.
you shared that.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. And I can't remember if I mentioned, but one of the things that I really love to do with the fixed community is be able to share lots of different people with them so that they can hear the experiences of different people, because I think a lot of times we get stuck in that, what you were talking about, that perfect quiet time scenario, that sometimes it's so overwhelming that we just don't even try anything because we
Mm-hmm.
can't make that happen. And so I'd love for them to hear the ways that other women are connecting with God and spending time with them, because I hope that it gives them some freedom and then even some encouragement, like, okay, even if I can't spend an hour with my Bible, I can still spend time with God. So I love that you're sharing, several different ways. I think that's perfect. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've had a relationship with God for a really long time. Would you say then that the ways that you enjoy spending time with God are the ways that you most easily connected with Him? Has that always been the same for you throughout your life, or kind of has it changed with seasons, or even not even just with seasons, but as you've matured, have those times with God changed?
Right. I think my answer to that might be more, not so much a where or a when, but maybe a how.
Yeah.
Um, because, I used to be afraid or resistant, I guess, to come to God with complaints
Yeah.
and frustration and kind of angsty feelings, because I didn't think it was nice, and it didn't feel respectful and worshipful. And so since my diagnosis, I've learned that our faith can be so deepened by honesty and even lament.
Yeah.
And it's such a rich way to communicate with God in times when you're hurting.
Mm.
But I think back, my mom, and maybe everybody's mom said this, but my mom used to say, if you don't have something nice to say, then don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
And I think our moms meant for like when we're talking to strangers or new acquaintances, but I tended to apply it to all my relationships.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work very well when you're talking about forming a deep relationship
Yeah.
with a person, but especially a deep relationship with God. So, I have learned not to wait until I have something nice to say, because then you have these silent periods with God, and that's when your faith is at risk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, it's hard though, and if you're somebody like me that struggles to get up and have this quiet time because you're in a difficult season for one reason or another,
Hmm.
I guess there's two things that I would suggest is number one, start or add something that you can listen to your everyday life,
Yeah.
and see if that doesn't help uh, inspire you to want to go deeper with God, because it's really easy to add that listening component
Hmm.
to your everyday life.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would say is that don't forget that you're not only supposed to take stuff in through devos and listening and all that, but you also need to speak back to God.
Yeah.
And that, even when, and maybe especially when you're in this ongoing, challenging season of life, but when you do, if you can be honest, your relationship is going to get stronger. And
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to learn,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
that that's why I love your 10-day do something challenge though, Rose, because it allows us to kind of step back and rethink our
Yeah.
devotional life and reimagine how could I do this differently and better for
Yeah.
where I'm at in my life. And your podcast, those little 15-minute sound bites are going to be so easy to work into my actual life. And I know that's going to help me make that relationship something that's more embodied in
Yeah.
me and not something that's like, here's my little time slot, and I'm going to feel guilty if I mess that time slot
Yeah.
up. So,
Yeah.
and I think ultimately that's what he wants for all of us. So
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I actually want to go back. I know we're going longer than normal, but I there was something that you said that I thought was just so important. You mentioned that if we can't be honest with God, that's absolutely true, because if we're so busy, if our heart and mind are consumed with hiding our real feelings from God because we're worried he'll be angry, we're worried he won't love us, we're worried we'll be seen as not Christian enough or not having enough faith, as long as we're consumed with that, we don't have any room in our heart to explore and experiment and experience with God. We don't have room for conversation and truth because we're too busy hiding ourselves. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that is such a huge component, like especially if we're feeling guilt over our devotional life, like if we're worried that because we couldn't do that perfect, quiet time thing, we didn't spend an hour in the Bible, that I'm not very Christian enough and God's not going to love me. If we're worried about that, there's no room in our minds, there's no room in our hearts and our spirits to be able to experience God truthfully. So I love that you shared that. I think that's just such a key and just so important. I just thank you.
Yeah.
It's so good. Okay, so tell us a little bit about you. I mentioned your book and your resources. Tell us a little bit about those, and then also share with us how can people stay connected with you beyond this live interview that we have.
Yeah, so I have been, after I wrote the book, I've been writing and speaking, and mostly I'm trying to equip and empower believers to really ask their deep questions when they're on those difficult paths in life. And, one of the things about my book, the title is Divine Detour, but the subtitle I think is the key, and it's the path you'd never choose can
Oh,
lead to the faith you've always wanted.
yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping that readers and, people who are in my community can get out of that is it's actually a book of 40 essays, but it's designed to help the reader really embrace their questions, and by doing so come away with a stronger relationship with God.
Yeah.
And that's my goal in the book and in all the writing that I'm doing. And so I love that you mentioned those free resources. I love to share those with everyone. The 5 prayers and promises when you can't talk to God, because it gets hard
Yeah.
sometimes, and it's easy to go silent. And then the cultivating gratitude devo. So there's several other resources available on my website, and that's at loriannwood.com. And there's a books page, and you can learn more about my book there and see a trailer of the book. And of course, it's available on Amazon and a few other places that are also shown on my books page. So I'm Lori Ann Wood on pretty much all the social media channels. So I would love to connect and learn more about other people's detours.
Thanks so much. Thank you for being a part of Launch Week and just for sharing your heart. Just tons of little nuggets in this tiny little interview. So thank you so much. I'm excited to stay connected beyond this, and just thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Rose. I'm excited for you tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
It's going to be
Here
great.
we go. 2 days. All right, Lori, have a great week.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.